This is the Chris Abraham Show.
Good morning, my friends. It's Sunday, September 18, 2022, the year of our Lord. And I just listened to an episode, or a partial episode, of Hidden Brain with that guy Shankar. And it is called Decoding Emotions, and I will include information about it in the description, like I always love to do, and or I just paste random crap in there. But I want to talk about it because I, as you may know, I have aphantasia and SDAM, so my connection to the past is very tenuous, and a lot of it is as the result of the echoes of people around me reminding me of the way I've behaved in the past and all these other things. But I really want to discuss my unique experience of growing up a white kid in Hawaii, and how I'm a fish out of water in many places in America, and how my being has affected my work life, has affected my owning a business, has affected all those things. And in many cases, TLDR or TMI, I don't know whether my personality traits are the result of growing up in Hawaii, where there's a very Asian type of relationship where you would never shame anybody to their face. It's a very hammering down all protruding nails, sort of do not shame anybody to their face experience. Or if my behavior is, and often popularly defined as passive-aggressive, if that behavior is the result of being a child of alcoholics, or being an only child, or being an introvert, or being a lonely child, or having my dad move out when I was young, I don't know. My best friend likes to think that all of it has to do with growing up thinking that I'm a 5'4" Japanese boy from when I was itty bitty. On the other hand, I communicate really well with Southern men, so maybe that kind of passive aggressiveness has a lot to do with a kind of grandiosity, an attempt to make other people feel comfortable and welcome around you, an unwillingness to shame in the face, an unwillingness to be perceived as a braggart or whatever. But let's get into this. I don't know, I might even have been over the entire episode by now, the introduction's so long, but we'll talk after the break. Welcome back to Season 4, Episode 11 of The Chris Abraham Show, formerly known as Chris Cast. Welcome back. I have always been an oddball, and I don't know whether being an oddball is because I'm an oddball, because Mark says it's my buddy Mark, not my partner Mark. My buddy Mark says that it might be an artistic temperament that I've always been avoiding and ignoring. Or it could be growing up in Hawaii where everybody's a little bit like passive-aggressive in order to not offend. Because if I offend you, you're likely to offend me. And if I don't offend you, if I play around... But that doesn't seem to work because I've got a lot of Asian friends whose Asian moms just say things like, you look ugly, you're stupid, work harder. I'm told that might have to do with the communication that you use within the family and the communication you use without the family or outside the family, but I'm not sure. But it's always been a point of contention in the same way that men constantly insult women about not saying what they mean, about coming to the point, about stop bullshitting me and just tell me. I've always been the recipient of rude Northeasterners who say such appalling things directly to my face. And the episode of Hidden Brain that I listened to partially this morning really sort of sparked my brain with regards to it. The episode is called Decoding Emotions. It is, I believe, the latest episode. And it's described as such. It's 58 minutes, worth every second. Quote, "We like to think that all humans are born with the same core emotions: anger, fear, joy, sadness, and disgust. But what if that's not true? This week, psychologist Batja Mesquita offers a different model of emotions, one that can help us better to understand our own feelings and those of the people around us." Brilliant, and so interesting. And I initially thought of it because of my friend Marlisa Mensink. She is a Dutch friend that I've had since 1992 or 1993, and I spent an entire summer living on her couch, and she's always been super nice to me and wonderful to me, and we get along like gangbusters, and she called me Emperor. And after years of knowing each other, and also being reinforced again and again and again that Dutch people are 100% brass tacks, I just assumed that Marlisa always liked me and wasn't, BSing me or gaslighting me or indulging me while we were gallivanting together. I felt like she was teasing me a lot, like a big sister or a sister. I never had a sister. And she would make fun of me and call me Emperor and, give me some shit. And we'd, totally speak openly and so forth. But a year ago, I felt all of a sudden insecure, like I was taking advantage of her by staying with her in her apartment on her couch for weeks and weeks and weeks, and that I was a stinky, rotten fish, and that she just appeased me for whatever reason, and that she probably resented that. But she never showed any sign of that. She's a strong, empowered, openly feminist woman, and in a good way. That's a compliment. Insofar that we printed T-shirts called Pomo 96, Postmodernism 96, in purple. I remember she invited me to the party that her summer school feminist theory class had. We did honky tonk. Like we traveled. We ate yummy French fries and curry and peanut sauce. It was a wonderful summer. I got to live in Utrecht, Netherlands, and learned to only say dankjewel and alsjeblieft. That's it. And I had a great time, but I wasn't sure, and now I'm sure that we did have a great time, and that you'll never be sure whether or not your experience of the world is part of. I think identity politics is really interesting because it makes me think things that I never thought about. I mean, every woman that I know has terrible stories of being in Paris, but even my ex-girlfriend Betsy, even she and my ex-girlfriend Michelle, even they saw that when I'm in Paris, the French love me. I think it must be because of my boyish charm, or the fact that I don't hesitate to be absurd or obtuse, or that I'm always willing to laugh at myself and buffoon myself or clown myself in order to have a good time or to enable people. I'm always extremely grateful. I'm always completely deferential. I always desperately try to pronounce the language right and not focus on grammar, but focus on sound. And I'm always amazingly, extremely grateful to be anywhere. And so my experience of Europe and Asia and everything has always been delightfully kind and gentle. And and then, I felt insecure all of a sudden that the time I was in Berlin, that my best friend Mark's best friend Frank was indulging me on behalf of Mark, or maybe didn't enjoy all the dinners that he had me over for, and so forth. And I'm like, Mark, does Frank like me? I felt this real Western imperialist entitlement, white cisgender thing going on. But Frank never had to do all these things. I wouldn't have missed dinner at his house. I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known if he had parties without me. I wouldn't have known if I wasn't included. And I wouldn't have missed it either very much. I mean, they were the best things of my life. They were amazing to be part of such a close community. But I'm completely insular. Any of you who know me, if you just plug me into a wall, I can sit blinking, blinking, blinking for years on end. Really, the only time I become fabulous Chris, who transcends time and space, is when I'm on the coattails of someone who's living a big life. I tell Mark that the only reason that I've lived a fabulous life is because of him, or because of Michelle Nolan, or because of Betsy, or because of Alan Patterson, or whomever. All these cool things that I've done have always been on the coattails of much cooler people. The fact that I go in, even Renaissance Weekend is totally Mark. Berlin is totally Mark. Nepal is totally Mark. The boat trip around through the from Acapulco to L.A. on a catamaran yacht, that was Mark. My year abroad in England had no intention or interest. It was my guidance counselor who suggested I do it. I mean, it's not a lack of interest in doing these things. It's just I'm super grateful just to sit here and read a book, or watch a movie, or write something, or do a podcast. I'm completely, the result of being a lonely child who had an infinite amount, lonely only child who had an infinite amount of art supplies with which to, and books as a young child with which to dick around. So I don't know. I know that Hawaii is the only time it gets aggressive in Hawaii is if you don't know your place. It happened a lot at my high school. I would start feeling like something on a stick. I would start feeling like a badass mofo, and I'd start strutting around the hallways of St. Louis School. And the upperclassmen, if I was, a sophomore or junior, would be like, "Oh, Chris, what, you think you bad?" Like, there would always be a check and balance to make sure that the gentlemen of Kalaipuhaku didn't get all uppity and and I don't know whether, and when I was a senior, that kind of containment, that kind of checks and balance was done by the alpha males of the football team. Ironically, I am, then I was 6'3" and 180 pounds. So even then I was big, but I've always been a more of a happy people pleaser dog than I've been a dog at the end of a leash wanting to kill people. But yeah, so moving here, like, a lot of the feedback I get is passive aggressive, or you'll completely talk around the thing, or I don't have an instruction manual for what you want, or any of these other things. Sometimes when I'm feeling super confident, I think it's willful ignorance, or it's what is it called? Negging, or it is gaslighting, or whatever. But other times, I feel like my inability or complete lack of wanting to be rude boy is something that it takes two to tango. Both people have to be the same kind of I don't know, what is the term? I mean, I was brought up to think it's being well brought up and not frickin' asshole rude. But it takes two people who have courtly ways, let's put it that way. It takes two people who have courtly ways to communicate this way. If communication requires a strap, or requires a stick, or requires that kind of thing, you'll eventually get it from me. But there's no... The downside of this behavior, and also being a 6'3", 350-pound guy, is that you have 5 or 6 opportunities. When I say something very genteelly and I make a request, it's generally an order. It's not optional. And so when I come to you with courtly love and broadly suggest that this is something that needs to happen, and then suggest that it probably has to happen by you, this is not an option. If you push it back to me, I will bark at you, and which isn't nice. Or if you drop it, or if you don't realize you've been tasked, then I will literally let the whole thing collapse to try to teach us a lesson to not do that again. So the ramifications of not playing the courtly game can be severe. Like, the irony is that just because, and this happens in Hawaii too, just because the Korean manufacturer of diaper bags is willing to redo orders that you're not happy with a couple times for free out of honor and to avoid humiliation or shame, doesn't mean that there isn't accountability for that. Like, the South Korean vendor will drop your contract, or will deprioritize your contract, or will reject your contract, or will fire you. there are ramifications for willfully or ignorantly avoiding the communication style of someone who doesn't communicate like you, just because you either think you can get away with something or you don't quite understand it. The outcome is the same. And I fire people for being unwilling to understand or even being able to understand how I communicate, rather than going too far out of my way to communicate in a style that other people can comprehend. Because in general, I'm not an employee anymore. I will go over the moon to try to understand subtext of a client. But if I have a partner or an employee and they do not communicate in the same way, if they don't get what I'm floating, then I fire them and find someone who does. And in terms of that, it's not even guaranteed that, quote, a woman who, quote, speaks in ways that are less direct and less bossy because they've been enculturated not to be bossy pants. Not even women in my world can understand necessarily the way I communicate. And partially that might have to do with the fact that it doesn't compute, right? Like, men shouldn't communicate that way. But if I want to communicate that way, and I'm getting a lot of pushback from people in Hawaii because I don't do it so well anymore, but if I want to speak with it in a courtly way, my buddy Mike Tucker does it beautifully. Anybody from the South does it just masterfully. There's that concept of preventing shame, preventing embarrassment, sort of a New Yorkers hate it because it's courtly, it includes small talk, and all these things are like sonars to try to figure out what the context is in the mission. It is to show intent, it's to show kindness, it's like the most of you are probably too young to know this, although I know my demographic is exactly my age and older. So back in the day when there were modems would have what is called an initial handshake. So when you dial up with a modem goes dee 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 dee, and then it hooks in. And at that point, what it's doing is it's trying to figure out the baud rate, it's trying to figure out the error correction, it's trying to figure out the noise on the line, it's trying to find out what type of conversation it's having, whether it's ANSI or whatever data stream or TCP/IP or I don't know, whatever. And that's what small talk is in the Southern and Hawaiian culture. If you avoid all that, you might be sending someone TCP/IP and all they want is, I don't know, token ring. So that's why I will small talk people for days and days and days before I do anything of import, because I want an opportunity. I want to give the other person every opportunity to run away. I want to give everyone opportunity to see my personality, to see my humor, to see my playfulness, to get a feeling for my intellect and maybe my politics and maybe my my knowledge base. And then after all that, then I will engage at the highest baud that I can communicate at based on what their interest is, what they might feel compelled to discuss, or at what reading ease. Is it Fleisch? Or does Fleisch mean flesh in German? What level of sophistication I should, whether I should stick to 7th grade English or whether I could start to use my $10 words. That's what I use it for. If you everything's good intel, though, right? If you are rude to me, a real shithole, if you keep on looking past my shoulder, like, I'll start building up walls against you, and I'll be like, garbage person, fuck 'em, as well. Like, it's always a two-way street. That's what you need to learn in any type of spycraft. You need to learn that everything that you learn about someone else are signals that someone else can learn about you. And what I've learned from a big, much bigger spook than me is that 95% of all spy conversation needs to be based on the truth, right? You can't go that far from the truth. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting to listen to this article. I highly recommend that you explore this. I don't know, right? I mean, as a personal note, like, my mom and I really had a terrible time communicating, and we spent the same amount of time in Hawaii, and I don't think that woman ever learned to speak that way. I mean, she was always, in my opinion, always really acerbic. Like, all the things that she got positive feedback for being a hot young woman in Jersey City and New York City. Like, and even, even as sort of a quasi-Irish queen debutante, she never realized that none of that shit really worked. Like, it always came across kind of acerbic, kind of rude, kind of bitchy, kind of mean-spirited, kind of sea-ish. And I don't know why she didn't mellow. And she told me why. She told me that I ain't going to be she didn't talk like that. She's like, I'm not going to be anybody's bitch. I'm a strong woman. I need to I need to show people that I'm tough. I'm a feminist. And I'm like, yeah, but you're putting yourself on a desert island in Hawaii. Like, not only are you in the middle of the Pacific around nobody you know except Bob and me, my dad and me, and maybe a couple of your transplant friends, but you're in your own additional island out of your defiance. And so you must be a really, like, lonely person, like, really scared and lonely, if all you have is a wall of bitch, because I know for a fact that this doesn't work in Hawaii. I, for a fact, spent my entire 12 years there, learning Pidgin, learning to fight, learning all about local culture, learning about body language, learning know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run, learning all the local cultural talk points, memorizing Replinger. Like, when I go into a place, I desperately try to create as many social signals that people have in common as possible, so that they know that I'm invested in their culture. And hopefully, I believe that plus a huge amount, like, I treat the world 100% all the time as if I went to spy and diplomat finishing school. I treat every relationship as if you are the ambassador for Sri Lanka. That courtliness, that attempt at never trying to, I desperately try never to condescend to anybody, never to think that they're my lesser, never to think that I take them for granted, always make them believe that I appreciate them. And this isn't some lame, pandering attempt at I was going to say esprit de corps, but it's not. It was just at the tip of my tongue. some form of noblesse oblige. It's not. It's not a condescending, queenly, like, oh, there, you pagan babies. I think it's so charming what you're doing on this island of yours. Oh, isn't it quaint, the kind of things that you do? Oh, really? Fabulous, darling. Isn't it nice how I think that your peasant garb is so charming? No. I think I'm amazed by everybody, man. Like, I think that Frank is one of the most sophisticated, erudite, charming. I mean, he makes being he makes being a divorced dad sexy. Like, he was both a playmate with his kids, and when there was a dinner party over, the kids were not invited. No dinner party ever included kids. It was an adult-only space. The kids get to fuck off and be kids in their room quietly, while the adults laugh and drink and eat and feast and talk and communicate, and that is badass. I admire Mina Aslama and Marlisa Mensick and Saskia Vingerling, and I admire Long Island Keith and his family, and he could be a real asshole, but at his wedding he was so courtly and generous and kind, but all of his family was there, and I wonder if all these New Yorker assholes and New Jersey assholes, I wonder if it's the opposite of that Korean woman and her mom, where the Korean family is like rough and tough to each other within the walls of family. You know, the dragon mom, is that what it's called? And then there's this courtliness and this lack of shame, hammered down protruding nails thing that happens outwardly, and maybe that's differently when it comes to New Yorker families, because Keith just adores his mom and his dad, and I don't know anything, dudes. Like, these are why I do these podcasts. So I'm hoping that as I dump my brain out for all to listen to, and for the 1, 2, or 3 people who do listen, we can get into a conversation about this. Like, what do you think? What do you believe? Am I full of shit? Do I have an accurate representation of myself? Is my perception that I'm open and honest and cheerful and friendly conditional? Do people feel that conditionalness? Yesterday, I went to get a breakfast burrito at Burrito Bros on Columbia Pike, and I'm really sweet with them. I'm always like, how you guys doing? How's LA bar? How are you? Hey, can I order and then I constantly said throughout the order, I want the red, like I didn't say Tabasco. I should have said Tabasco, but I'm like, I want the red hot sauce. Like, I don't want the I don't want the 4 like fancy hot sauces that are delicious on the regular, chicken burrito. I want the red salsa picante kind of sauce. I said that again and again and again, and then they put the chipotle sauce on, and I'm like, no, I want the red one. And then finally they found the Tabasco style one, and I asked them to put it on. And then when it was done, I said, listen, in a real assertive voice, listen, I don't want to be an asshole. I don't want to be the asshole. If I were the asshole, I would send this back to have it remade. But I do not want to waste food. So I am going to take this with the salsa that I didn't want, mixed with the salsa that I did want, and happily go and have breakfast with it. But I want you to know that I'm displeased with this situation. And then I said thank you and left. Like, to me, that is so far so far, like for the rest of the half an hour that it took for me to eat the burrito, I desperately wanted to run back to the kiosk, or whatever, the standing kiosk quasi train car caboose that their store is in, and throw myself at their mercy and say, "I'm sorry I acted out that way. I really didn't mean that. It turned out being delicious. I hope you can forgive me." So I didn't do that. I assume, Mark tells me all the time that when I feel like my communication is so rude and so mean-spirited and so demanding and so straightforward and completely to the point where you're going to divorce me as a friend or a business partner or a colleague or a boyfriend, Mark tells me, well, you're just getting close to communicating clearly. So, I don't know. Based on that scenario, what do you think? I'm out of juice. I will include the link to the Hidden Brain, Hidden Mind episode in the description, and when we come back, I will tell you how to contact me. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. This is Chris Abraham. This is the Chris Abraham Show, formerly known as ChrisCast. I am drinking cold Cafe Bustelo coffee from yesterday and loving it. Not iced coffee, just cold yesterday's coffee. I transfer my coffee from my 18-cup Mocha Express stovetop coffee into an insulated bottle, and then generally speaking, I only have 1 cup in the morning before I go on my coffee run and drink tons of espresso, and so there's generally 1 or 2 cups left over in the carafe. I have an insulated carafe that came with a Ninja. Is it a Ninja? From a Ninja coffee pot that one of my clients gave me for Christmas, and I got rid of the coffee maker and kept the carafe because I'm a Cafe Bustelo forever Mocha Express. Hey Google, who makes the Mocha Express coffee maker? Bialetti. I'm a Bialetti guy.
Sorry, I don't know how to help with that. Here are other things you can try.
Hey Google, stop. So, I'm a Bialetti Mocha Express kind of guy. I have every size, and I just went ahead and bought the $100, is it 99 or 190? Anyway, there's one that you can't find anywhere, and I think it's called an 18 cup. I think there's 27 point something ounces that it makes, and I just make that, man. So, how you can connect to me, I'm chrisabraham.com. That's my HQ. If you go to chrisabraham.com/contact, you'll see all my contact stuff, but I usually put it in the description. You can email me at chris@abraham.su. The SU top-level domain, TLD, is for the former Soviet Union. And the reason why I am a Soviet commie is because, as someone who has the last name Abraham, who is, the uniter of 3 faiths, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, it's impossible to find Abraham.com. And when I was a younger man in my 20s, I always admired people who had first name at last name dot top level domain. So when I found that I could still register SU, Soviet Union domains, especially since I live in DC and I was a kid of the Soviet Union, my nostalgia kicked in and I went through the hoops required to probably be on all kinds of FBI lists, but I was able to secure Abraham.su and Girovic.su from the Russian Federation's registrar. In fact, my company's email is garriscorp.com, but my short form, since the people who had garris.com wanted $8,700 for the domain, I bought an Icelandic address, gerr.is. Anyway, on with the show. +1 202 352 5051 is my personal cell phone. But if I don't know you, you're going to being ignored. You can also use that phone number to reach me on Signal and Telegram and WhatsApp and Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, and I guess somewhere else. I don't know. If you want to reach me on Google Chat, I'm cabraham@gmail.com. And all my socials are like Chris Abraham, right? So twitter.com/Chris Abraham, reddit.com /u/Chris Abraham, Instagram.com/Chris Abraham, LinkedIn.com/in/Chris Abraham, Facebook.com/Chris Abraham. Maybe that's it. My Tumblr is chris-abraham.com. And I think that's it. Oh, yeah, if you want to schedule 15 minutes of chatty chat for real, like where we'll literally talk, and you can text me at +1 202 352 5051. But if you really want to chat with me for 15 minutes on voice for free, without me ignoring you, go to calendly.com/Chris Abraham /15 and that'll schedule on both our calendars a 15-minute chat, and I would love to do that. And I love you with all my heart. Tschüss, tschüssi, auf Wiedersehen, à tout à l'heure, à demain, hasta mañana, hasta luego, ciao, goodbye, aloha, and mahalo. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The Chris Abraham Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time.